That's what the issue is here. We are going to go to Mars. We are going to develop Mars. Why and how? We're going to develop Mars because we're human. And we can't stand not doing it. That's the pioneer spirit. You go there because you would be ashamed of yourself if you didn't do it. And this is where human creativity comes into play. And the fellow who sits there and says, let's be traditional, as the Greenie does, is not fit to continue to exist. And if he runs society, society will not exist. So that's this question of leadership. And this all goes to this whole biological system. Before there was human creativity, there was life. And life, when it progressed, developed, produced human creativity. Our job is to progress in maintaining human creativity as such and going beyond what human creativity is today. And this will probably come through the development of the next higher order of energy flux density, which will be the day that we go to Mars within a week and can return through thermonuclear fusion. So we're headed toward now to escape from the mere kind of fusion we use now, but thermonuclear fusion. That's the point we aim for. That's where the change comes. That's where man begins to move into the solar system and beyond. We start now by keep trying to beat off some of these rocks that threaten to destroy the Earth, that sort of thing. But we're headed toward a deliberate commitment as fast as possible to the successful mastery and deployment of thermonuclear fusion. A transition which is not possible without human creativity, as distinct from this crazy president and other kinds of degenerates. We must carry man forward into higher states than mankind has ever been before, at least in this system. And that's our mission, and that is the mission of creativity. And creativity is not encouraged in this society. People say they're creative, they steal something, they call it creative. But this is the great challenge. The great challenge is to recognize that creativity is a phenomenon in the universe which, to our knowledge, is unique to mankind. There is no evidence of any other species than mankind which is capable of creativity, and especially most of our economists today.
And so now we're at the point where human scientific thought needs to be beyond just a geological force. We're at the point where scientific thought needs to be a solar system force. Actually, it's physical manifestation in the transformation of the solar system as a whole.
Well, look at what's happening in Russia. The orientation of the Russian scientists under this presidency of Russia, it represents exactly that.
Yeah.
An attempt to break into resuming that conception of mankind.
Right.
In Russia itself, in Earth, in the immediate vicinity of Earth. The defense of Earth is an example of that. And when we get to thermonuclear fusion as a mode of transportation and work and so forth, where we have now, again, everything about time is now changed. The definition of time has changed with that. That change is what we must bring on. Anything that opposes that is the enemy of mankind's existence. And when people are doing it, who are opposing this, are criminals. They may not intend to be criminals,
right,
but their behavior is habitual, therefore they're habitual criminals. And they should cut it out. And that should be the doctrine which we somehow instill in people to recognize. Because human creativity, which is lacking in most all of our economists, at least by profession, they may have secret, nourishing thoughts about creativity, but they're hiding them carefully from their colleagues, at least so far. And look at the presidents we choose. They're rubbish. From a standpoint of a human species question, they're rubbish. We should probably put them out in the garden, and if they, where they can have a chance to ripen, perhaps.
At least use them as fertilizer.
I wouldn't do that. It's cool. I would say give them a chance to do their own ripening.
Yeah, and this Russian policy, it's across the board. We were at this event in D.C. a few weeks ago. A bunch of, pretty much all the major space agencies were represented. I don't think China made it, but a few others maybe. Most of them are there. The only agency that presented a real coherent program, an actual coherent program of a fundamental advance, was the Russian program. They're the only people that actually presented a whole conception about, I think being intentionally provocative in saying it, but saying, look, we're sick of just these low Earth orbit missions. We're sick of just getting into orbit, orbiting the Earth. We've been doing that for, 50, 40 years, right? And they defined a very clear full colonization of the moon as an immediate 15-year objective.
That's a very interesting case, because the Russians in general, as individuals, had pretty much lost that inspiration. What has happened under
the attacks on the 90s.
Putin and company have been shown the ability, under the appropriate conditions, to induce a population to return to its potential of an earlier period. It comes out as a sense of pride. In the Russian case, it comes out as a sense of shame, a sense of personal shame for the fact that this degeneration has been allowed to occur. And what you've seen with the Putin phenomenon is the success of Putin in winning this last election after the presidency has actually changed the character of the self-identity of the Russian personality. Not for every Russian, but you find that in the Russian population, there is now a renaissance of commitment to progress. And that's what the bastards, the British bastards, are upset about, is the fact that the species, of the Russian species, so-called, is still alive. And its example is encouraging other people in other countries of the world to fight too, and not to capitulate. And that's what you get with the dignity of our generals, leading generals. The same thing. They're operating out of basis of a certain kind of humanistic pride, not to give up, not to betray the nation, to fight as hard as you can and as well as you can, to save the nation and save civilization. And that's the thing that used to spread that as an infection, to spread among people a sense of pride in progress and a sense of shame if you don't work to progress. That's what's needed. And you see the people in our own country who capitulate to this bestialization which this beast in the presidency, in the White House, represents. We are no longer human. We've given up on it. We become people who vote for Obama. And a lot of people in the United States are not thinking in that direction right now. And Obama doesn't like that one bit. Nor do the British. The British want us to destroy ourselves and done everything they could to bring that about. But now, Russia has done something with Putin, with his election, in bringing back a sense of pride among nations which had lost their sense of pride, which were kissing the rear end of the British. And you see, as the breakdown of the European system, it's a menace, it's a danger to the existence of everybody in Europe, this collapse. But at the same time, it is the discredit of what the British represents. And the hope is that somehow this will become infectious enough so that Europeans will join us in getting rid of the British plague. And we will even free the British of the British plague. And I think many of the British today, if they had their choices, would prefer that. So I'm optimistic in that sense. Fighting optimism, it's the only kind that works. Because we're human. And we can't stand not doing it. That's the pioneer spirit. You go there because you would be ashamed of yourself if you didn't do it. And this is where human creativity comes into play. And the fellow who sits there and says, let's be traditional, as the Greenie does, that's what the issue is here. We are going to go to Mars. We are going to develop Mars. Why and how? We're going to develop Mars because the whole biological system. Before there was human creativity, there was life. And life, when it progressed, developed, produced human creativity, is not fit to continue to exist. And if you run society, society will not exist. So that's this question of leadership. And this all goes to this